Welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast. My name is Melissa, and this is Sammi. We are diving deep into conversations that connect and inspire. Stories of resilience, triumph, and transformation. Stories that take us to the heart of human connection. Please note that opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect those of this podcast. Please listen with your kindness and an open mind. Each story shared is authentic and vulnerable. Let's embrace our differences with empathy, knowing every voice enriches us. Together, let's cultivate a community of respect and curiosity. Thank you for listening. Now sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired. Welcome back to the Happy Soul Podcast, everyone. Today, Sammi and I are going to chat about our upcoming mini-series on SMA awareness. So today's kind of just a kickoff to that mini-series, and we're just going to chat about how this came to be and kind of kick off this month. So the month of August is SMA Awareness Month. And for those of you who do not know, SMA stands for Spinal Muscular Atrophy. And this is something that I did not know a ton about before we started this. So I feel like I'm learning a whole ton in having these conversations and preparing for this mini-series and doing a little bit of research and going to some events. And we're starting to learn a lot about SMA and a lot about this community. And there's still so much to learn, but we're really excited to kind of take you all on this journey with us and learn about SMA. Hi, Sammi.
Hi.
How's it going?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Hey. Go ahead. I was just thinking about how, I was thinking about having this conversation with you, and I was just thinking, wait, how did this come to be? Because we went to Jessica Jansen's event in January, and now I don't remember if we said to her we want to do an SMA awareness month, or if she said, if you do SMA awareness, I'll be on it. Is that how it went?
Yep. She said, I think we had already decided on Childhood Cancer Awareness Month at the time. We had told her that, and then she said, if you do SMA Awareness Month is August, I'll be on for that month if you do that.
Yes.
Or something
and then we
like
said,
that. Okay.
Yes. And we said, heck yeah. And also, let's make a month of it. We're not just going to do one. We're going to make a month of it and do as many episodes as we can fit into a month, because we don't do anything small around here.
Yeah. Well, I think it kind of is what sparked, this is not specifically SMA specific, but I just want to say it is because it is what sparked us jumping behind causes every year. We were just starting. We hadn't even released, I don't think we'd released the first episode of our second season, or maybe we just had. Maybe we just had released the first episode of our second season before the Jessica Jansen event. And our first season, we didn't really have a plan. We just were like, we like people, we like hearing their stories. Let's make a safe space to do that. It's fun. And we knew we wanted to make the podcast more. We just didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
And then we had just started chatting with Claire, and we were like, yeah, let's do Childhood Cancer Awareness Day. Let's do Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And then Jessica Jansen said that this all happened in the span of a week. I'm pretty sure Claire messaged us within a week of the Jessica Jansen event. And then we decided we do Childhood Cancer Awareness Day. And then she mentioned Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. We said, let's do a mini-series on that, because we're already doing mini-series this season. And then just at the event, Jessica Jansen said that for the SMA, and we were like, yeah, let's do that too.
Yep.
So it just
so good.
Happened so good. And I'm really grateful for it. Just to be totally candid, not just because it helped us figure out a direction, but also mostly because of how much I've learned about I'm going to leave this in, but I just feel like I never knew what the correct term was for talking about communities of people that live in wheelchairs or have, need walkers or whatever. And multiple times people have referred to it as a disabled community. And so I'm like, okay, or a disabled person. And I'm like, or person living with a disability. And that's been said by people we've interviewed for this. So I'm going with that as the politically correct term. If I'm wrong, please someone message us. But I didn't know a lot about that world prior to this, and I feel like we've learned a lot. What about you? I think you've mentioned that you kind of grew up Not necessarily SMA, but.
Well, do you know what's wild is, yes, okay, so there was a time when I worked in my little small town. There's an organization that works with adults with disabilities, and most of those disabilities are mental disabilities, like, and again, I hope that that's still the political correct term. We'd have to, who's the best person to ask about that is Chantel knows all about those things. But actually, and Chantel and I both worked for the same kind of company, and they work with inclusion of adults into workspaces and life. And so I worked with some people there, but there wasn't a lot of physical. There wasn't a lot, like there were some with physical disabilities, but not a ton. But Chantel's nephew, my cousin, was born with a rare gene disease and is in a wheelchair for life. And that would probably be the closest person to me. So not incredibly close. There has been exposure a little bit, but not incredibly close. But what's wild is my brother-in-law had a brother when he was growing up. His name was Sean. And he was in a wheelchair, and I knew that he was in a wheelchair. I knew that he died from his disease young, but I was never comfortable to dig into it and be like, what was it? And tell me about it. Like, I just listened, and they talked about Sean. They didn't talk about necessarily with me, because we never dug into it, what he had specifically. And then I was telling my sister about this mini-series, and she was like, Melissa, that's what Sean had. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Floored. So I didn't know Sean ever, because by the time my brother-in-law met my sister, he had passed. But it was wild to me that, like, there's this connection in there that I didn't even know about. Mm-hmm. And now has led me to, and starting the podcast too has made me more comfortable asking questions too, and now has made me feel more comfortable asking those questions and feeling like I'm learning about my sister's brother-in-law at the same time is, on a personal level, I'm like, that's really neat how that worked out that way. And really, that all came to be just because I found Jessica Jansen on Instagram, and I thought she was crazy inspirational, and I was like, Joy, I love Joy. Like, I want to follow this person, and then started slowly learning her story. And then, of course, we have her coming up on this miniseries. So it's just crazy how the universe works like that. And I am really looking forward to, we've had some of these conversations already, and we've been making a ton of notes on takeaways and things that we're learning. And we're really excited for people to learn with us and to take people along this journey, because these stories are inspiring and a heart, they pull at your heartstrings, and they're beautiful and difficult. And these people that we're speaking to are resilient, and they are strong, and they are fighters. And in every conversation, there is something that we're learning and a new inspiration to take. And for the record, this isn't just a mini series for people within the SMA community. This is a mini series for everybody, because there is something that we can pick up from every one of these conversations. There is something we can learn. There's inspiration we can take from, and there's something within every single one of these conversations that we can apply to our life today, right now, tangibly. Mm-hmm. I freaking love that shit.
Yeah. I also think, like, to add on to what you're saying, that the takeaways is, what we don't know, mm-hmm. and we come into any situation in life with preconceived notions or opinions or whatever about what we think is right or wrong, or the way that it should be, or the way that someone should respond. And I think that opening up ourselves to the perspectives of people that maybe we don't get the opportunity to engage with, like you just mentioned that you grew up kind of being around more of the disabled community and in different aspects. I didn't. Mm-hmm. I didn't have anybody in my life. Well, that's not true. I didn't really. When I was at a very young age, like in elementary school, I know that at the elementary school that I went to had a program that the grade 5s could volunteer their lunch hours to help with kids that were in wheelchairs or in the disabled kids at the school. And I remember volunteering for that. And one of the kids, there was one kid that everybody wanted to take care of because he had the coolest wheelchair. And he was also really funny. And I remember like getting to work with him was the best. And so I remember doing that in elementary school. I don't remember much of it other than that, but there was a boy in a there was two boys in a wheelchair, one that could speak and one that couldn't. And I remember doing that a little bit. And then I also remember in elementary school, there's a family that you would know of, but I won't bring their names up. Mm-hmm. And I played with their little girls a bit when I was in elementary school. I don't know what their diagnosis is or was. They're still alive. But I know I played with them growing up for a while. Mm-hmm. But after that, and it was only in elementary school, beyond that, I had zero interaction with anybody that would fall into that category. The only one I remember seeing is Candace. I remember seeing around town, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And I only saw her. I didn't know her. I'd never spoken to her. I just remember seeing her around town as a young adult, and that's it. Like when I was a young adult, and so I had no interaction with it. I was so far removed from that community, and it makes me sad because when you're not around something, it can make you uncomfortable to be around it. Mm-hmm. And that we shouldn't be uncomfortable around other people, period. Right. No matter, I mean, unless it's an unsafe person. Right. But that's a personality trait, not something else.
Yeah. Not a physical attribute.
Exactly. That's a personality trait. Yeah. And so I didn't want that for my kids also. I didn't want my kids to grow up having no, I don't fault my parents for it, but having no exposure to different things. And so I'm really grateful for that. And so much that I've learned. There's been so much that I've learned that's challenged my perspective and just helped me think a lot differently about things. Even like every time I take a ramp, I think, yes, this was not meant for me, but I'm using it. And I know that I used to think those things. I used to think some derivative of this wasn't meant for me, but it was a different mentality. Now it's like, yeah, this wasn't meant for me, but it's benefiting me too. So it's benefiting more than just me as a mom with a stroller.
100%.
So, yeah.
100%. And I think like sometimes you can and sometimes you cannot gain that exposure in physical proximity. You know, like sometimes you can't do that in physical proximity, but you can do that in conversation. And that is partly what this is about. Like, let's take this thing. And I don't know. I mean, maybe this is a rabbit hole that we should go down another time, but I don't know. But it feels to me like our generation was raised in a very don't ask questions because that's rude. Do not look longer than, you know, like I remember my mom saying, and this is not a fault on my mother. She's an incredibly polite person. I remember her, I remember her saying like, don't stare. But that's the lesson that I learned. Oh God, don't stare. But there wasn't like as far as I know, now this is again, no fault on my mom because she would have the conversation if I would have asked the question. But I think that our generation as a whole, we were not encouraged to ask questions. We were encouraged to put your nose down, do not stare, and don't talk about it or ask questions, which leads to a very uneducated. You don't know unless somebody tells you, unless you ask a question. Yep. And so I think that having these conversations is super important because it's just more learning about people, which is why we started the podcast in the first place. Let's learn about people. Let's learn about what they're going through. Let's step into, for a moment, if we can step into somebody's world and learn from their perspective, it just feeds everybody. I mean, why not? Yeah. Anyways.
No, I totally agree. No, it's okay. I did want to say when you were telling a quick story, I did go and look up and the politically correct term is disabled or disability. Okay. That is the politically correct term. Okay. So, I mean, I briefly skimmed something. I didn't read into it in depth. I just briefly skimmed to make sure we weren't continuing to say the wrong word in this episode. I'm going to keep this all in the episode. But talking about your staring, absolutely. I grew up with the same lesson. Don't stare. Don't ask questions. Pretend like they're exactly the same as you. And I feel like it was even like, and this is obviously not specifically related to SMA or the disabled community, but like it was like, don't acknowledge if somebody's black. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's so much so like, don't acknowledge that you're different. And it's like, no, but we do have differences and that's okay. It's don't judge based on those differences and don't condemn based on those differences. But it's okay to acknowledge that we're different. Like, that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a lot of what we grew up with, too, was don't stare, don't ask questions, just pretend like it's exactly the same and there's nothing different. And I mean, like, to an extent, that's valid. Like, you don't want to treat someone that's in a wheelchair differently just because they're in a wheelchair. But it's okay to acknowledge that they're in a wheelchair.
Here, let me get the door for you.
Let me get the door for you. Let me, like, you know what I mean? Or, like, don't, when you say, like... I saw your friend the other day. What friend was it? Well, they have purple hair. They're tall. They work at the gym. Are they black? Yeah. I didn't really notice. Yes, you did. Like, you know what I mean? Like, same with like, were they in a wheelchair? I didn't notice. Yes, you did. Like, don't. That's just part of their looks. It's no different than observing their blonde hair or their blue eyes or their brown hair or their brown. Like, it's part of them, and that is okay.
Yeah.
But we grew up with that same thing, and I remember being taught that don't stare, and I still have this like feeling of like don't stare. And like what I shifted with my kids is like, if you're going to stare, you need to say hello.
Ooh.
Because it's not okay. It's okay to look at people. Like, that's part of being a human being. It's okay to be curious about somebody. But staring at that person and just staring it does become rude at a certain point. So if you're going to look at someone, and if you're curious enough about that person, go and talk to them. If you're curious enough that you want to look at them for a long period of time, go say hello. Go have a conversation. And so that's what I've done that for a very long time with my kids. But
that's so interesting. I love it.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but I'm like, we all look at people. We're all curious, you know?
Yeah. And just to remove the stigma of like, like, you don't want it to be fearful. You don't want to be like, I'm scared of you because there's this different thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, let's just remove that fear. And, you know, it almost goes back to the conversation we had with Tori. What is your heart? What is your personality? You know? Anyways, we're down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but, you know, one of those things, too, is, like, recognizing that some people have different needs and need different, I don't know if accommodations is the right word, but like the handicapped parking spots. Without these conversations, one could if you're not directly affected, if you've never experienced it, without conversations like this, and I'm not saying our podcast, but in general, having conversations, bringing to light, learning about people, learning about what they go through. Like, when you have these conversations, you realize how important those parking spots are. And after you can hear this kind of conversation or be in somebody's life for a little while who needs them, you're not going to go park there anymore.
Yeah.
You're not sneaking in to that spot because you understand how important they are.
Yeah.
I was in the vehicle with somebody the other day who went to park there, and I threw a full outfit.
Did you say something?
Absolutely not. Oh, yes, I did.
Good for you.
Not happening. No.
I want to ask more about that, but I won't right now.
Nope.
I've never one time parked in a handicap spot. Like, and that's mostly true. I've like pulled in to like jump in the back and like throw my kid a water bottle and then jump back in and drive. Like, to not actually, like, I'm not actually stopping there. Does that make sense? That's the most I've ever done. And only if there's been multiple spots still open. But I've never done that. But I just don't, it's so wild to me when, and I'm not trying to judge people, but that we think like, oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. Like, do you know what drives me crazy is I really wish that they would stop putting baby change tables in the handicap stalls.
Oh.
Because
never thought of it.
Yeah. you're a parent and you go change your baby's diaper.
You have to use that stall.
You have to use that stall. And then you come out and there's someone waiting with a wheelchair and you're like, I'm really sorry. Like, it's where they put the change table, right? And it's like, why does the person in the wheelchair have to suffer because I have to change my baby's diaper, which has absolutely nothing to do with the toilet?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
Wow. I think, I think just some people are like, you are a person who is very good at seeing how this could look or seeing how this could affect somebody else. You're very good at that. Where a lot of people need to either have somebody in their life or be confronted with it or hear a conversation or be part of a conversation in order to learn the value of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, you're really good at it too. That's why we
Oh, thanks.
communicate in such ridiculous ways. And my husband makes fun of me.
Really?
Oh yeah. He's like, you guys just need to say what you want to say and stop talking around. Stop apologizing for what you might be offending and just talk.
Yeah, it's true.
Anyways.
He's right. You're right, AJ.
I know.
It's hard though.
Yeah. So anyways, back to the SMA thing. I'm really grateful that this fell into our lap, it really did just fall into our lap. Like it really, truly did. The only thing we did to make it fall into our lap is show up at the event early.
100%. And grasp the idea and run with it. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm really grateful for this, for being able to, because the thing is no, we don't have a huge following. Would it be great if we did? Absolutely. But to the community that does follow us, we're bringing awareness to that community. And even the people that are in our lives that don't listen to our podcast are still being impacted by us learning about this topic
100%.
and spreading that awareness, and they say the average person has about 250 people that they know that are kind of in some way, what's the word I'm looking for? Thank you. Influenced by. So that's 500 people without our followings on like our podcast followings that we could potentially be kind of influencing at least a little bit in more knowledge around spinal muscular atrophy, which is awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is awesome. And it really is an incredible thing to learn about. It's a really, it's a fascinating community. Like I'm fascinated with how tangible the change has been. It's incredible. Like these conversations, y'all wait till you hear these conversations. Like I'm not going to tell you in this episode because you got to tune in, but it is incredible to hear what has been happening in science and what has been, I mean, there's a lot of struggle. There's a lot that still needs to change. The fact that there's things out there that can change and save lives now is like, it's mind-boggling how
and within 10 years, like within the last 10 years. Yeah.
It's
things that have gone from trials to life-saving protocols.
Yeah.
Like
it really is incredible. So that's another side of this that is really amazing to witness. And like we witnessed when we went to Jessica's event, we went to Lewiston's birthday. And when we witnessed that, I was just in awe of the community, of the people rallying behind this cause, and of the tangibility of it and how it's changing and the lives it's changing. And it's just like, you want a cause to donate money to that you can see tangible change. This is a really good one. It really is amazing. And we've heard different aspects of that scattered throughout all of these conversations that we've been having. And I'm just really excited to share these conversations with our listeners because they really are beautiful conversations.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't realize that they each have shared, of the 3 out of 4 so far, potentially 5 that we've recorded, they each have shared some piece of how the research in the last 10 years has impacted them personally or people they know. And that's in a very positive way.
Yeah.
Like that's, well, mostly.
Yeah.
That's really incredible. Yeah. I feel like I haven't, to be totally candid and honest, I feel like I haven't deep dived enough into learning more about SMA beyond the conversations we've had. Like I've done some Googling and some little bits of looking things up here and there, but not enough to really comment on knowledge of what's changed, because I feel like what I have learned has just been reaffirmed and recommunicated in the episodes that we've recorded. And so oh, that was probably just really squeaky with my chair.
Didn't hear it. I didn't hear a word.
No, I know, but I bet you it's going to pick up on this. Anyways, yeah, I feel like it's what was I saying?
The research you've done into SMA.
Yeah, like I I want to sit here and talk more about SMA, but I don't really know what else to say.
Well,
not because there's not something to say, but because it's everything that I don't want to say a bunch of stuff that's coming out in the episodes.
Yeah, for sure.
Mostly.
For sure. Because I do think that these are really powerful episodes, and I think that's pretty much it. I'm just really excited to share them, and I think that they're just going to be well received, and I'm excited, and I'm also really grateful for the people who have given us their time in this and who have shared their energy with us, shared their stories with us. Is really it's really been a joy to have these conversations, and I'm just really excited to pass this along. I feel like we've wrapped up this little gift, and we're just going to give it to all of you.
Yeah. And thank you to everybody who is going to follow along with this mini series, whether you know someone who's one of our guests, or you know someone who lives with SMA, or you have known someone who lived with SMA, or you're not related to the SMA community at all, and you're still here willing to learn about the SMA community. Like, yeah,
if you're
thank you.
Sorry, I did the thing. I interrupted you, but
it's okay.
If you're a person that's curious about life and about how other people live, if you're a person that loves to hear inspiration, I mean, these stories are all perfect. So,
yep.
Yeah,
I agree. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. To help support the growth of this podcast, please feel free to leave us a review, follow us on socials, or recommend us to your friends. Your support honestly means the world to us. With love, Sammi and Melissa.